The Royal Detectives. The historian Herodotus, in the 4th century BC, recorded this tale from, as he says, ancient Egyptian priests, a narrative which has been called the first detective story. Yet it is one of the world's most widely distributed folk tales, and is known to the people of Scotland and Mongolia, Norway and Tibet, Cyprus and Russia, as well as in France, Germany, Greece, Armenia, Wales, and North Africa. It is very widely dispersed among the world's gypsies in the master thief versions. One scholar believes that the gypsy telling is the original one, even more complete than the ancient Egyptian. It is believed to have entered European literature in the 12th century in the Latin Seven Wise Masters. Many versions claim or imply that they are historical fact, and supply names and places where the events are said to have happened. 600 years ago, the place given is the palace of the Doge of Venice, and the thief is named Bindo. In Denmark, the robber is Klaus, and the treasury that of Count Geert of Jutland. For the French, the crime took place at Morlaix. The Russian name of the robber is Jabaka, and in Holland, he is from Bruges. The Egyptian king Ramsinitus had a great abundance of silver, at that time rarer and more valuable than gold. He ordered a certain builder to make a treasure house abutting upon the wall of the palace. Now this builder, when he was about to die, called his 2 sons to him and told them that he had placed one of the stone blocks on pivots, so that even one man could move it, and thus enter the chamber from outside. In this way the sons would be able to steal as much of the king's wealth as they wished. As soon as their father was dead, these 2 young men went to the palace wall at night, found the stone, and entered the treasure room. They took away a considerable quantity of the treasure. The king could not understand what had happened to his silver when he entered the room whose seals were unbroken and saw how much was missing. So he set a trap after the 3rd opening of the room. One of the lads was caught in this trap and could not move. He at once asked his brother to cut off his head and carry it away, so that he could not be recognized and bring trouble upon the whole family. This the brother did, leaving the treasury by the same secret way in which he had entered it. The king was astonished to see the headless body, and wondered how he could track down the thieves. He decided to have the trunk hung on the palace's outside wall under guard. The guards were to arrest and bring to the king anyone seen weeping or making a commotion before the body. The dead thief's mother, when she came to know that the body of her son was suspended in this way, was greatly disturbed. She asked the surviving son to do anything he could to get the body back. If he did not obey her, she said, she would go to the king and confess. So the youth took some donkeys and loaded them with skins full of wine. He drove them past the guards and made sure that some of the skins fell to the ground, while he pretended to be occupied with the donkeys. The guards stole some of the wineskins, thinking themselves very clever. Then the thief acted as if he was very angry with the guards, but they spoke kindly to him, and he appeared to be mollified. He got his asses into proper order again, and then became so friendly with the guards that he gave them some more of his wine. They all began to drink, and they consumed one wineskinful after another, until the guards were befuddled and lay down to sleep. In the dead of night, the thief stepped over the sleeping guards and took his brother's body away on his donkeys. The king, when he heard of this exploit, was naturally furious, and was even more determined than ever to locate the thief. He told his daughter to receive and to make friends with anyone from the city who came to her, and to challenge him to tell her the greatest trick and crime he could think of. If anyone told her the story of the headless thief, she should seize hold of his hand and cry out so that he could be arrested. The thief, however, heard of the plan and went to the girl with a dead man's arm concealed under his robe. He told her that his greatest crime had been to rob the king's treasure in the way already described, and that his greatest trick had been to fool the palace guards as he had done. When the princess seized the arm which he held out, he stole away in the darkness, leaving her with a severed limb. When the king heard of this, he announced that if the thief would declare himself, he would be rewarded. The thief revealed himself, and the king gave him his daughter as a reward for his cleverness. Conflict of the Magicians. The magical conflict theme is found in the Arabian Nights and Germany in the collection of the Grimms, in Mongolia and Norway, in Gaelic, Danish, Welsh, Italian, and many other languages. People as diverse as the Albanians of East Europe, the Tamils of South India, the Austrians and the Kalmucks have thrilled to its incidents, which have few variations, for longer than any recorded literature can tell. The story given here is from the great Kalmuk collection, the Sidi Kur, translated by Professor Yulg. The teacher Nagarjuna referred to at the end of the story died in 212 BC. This and other supposedly Buddhist legends are found in the great Welsh traditional collection, the Mabinogion. In this version, the story is given as an account of Taliesin, the Welsh bard of the 6th century, in the library of Jesus College, Oxford, in the distinguished translation of Lady Charlotte Guest, believed to be the earliest European version. In the kingdom of Magadha there once lived 7 brothers, and the strange thing about them was that they were all magicians. They could do all kinds of amazing things, and nobody knew how they carried out their enchantments. A mile or so from where they lived was the house of 2 brothers who were the sons of a Khan, a local ruler. The elder of these 2 wanted to learn magic, so he went to the 7 magicians and he said, "Teach me to understand your art." And he stayed with them for 7 years, trying to find out their secrets. But the magicians kept him very busy, doing all kinds of tasks, and they never taught him the key to their mystic knowledge. One day, however, the younger brother came to visit him and, looking through a crack in the door into the room where the magicians were at work, managed to learn and to understand the whole of their magical science. And so the 2 sons of the Khan went home together, the elder because he could never learn anything from the magicians, and the younger because he had learnt everything that they knew. As they went along, the younger brother said, "Now that I have obtained all their secrets, the 7 magicians will probably want to do us some harm. So you go to the stable, which we left empty. There you will now find a wonderful horse. Put a bridle on him and lead him out to sell. Make sure that you do not go in the direction of the magicians. When you have sold him, bring back the money you have received." When he had said this, he went away, turned himself into a horse with the spells he had learnt, and entered the stable to wait for his brother to collect him for sale. But the elder brother, since the magicians had told him nothing, was not afraid of them at all. He said to himself, "If my brother is so clever that he can conjure a fine horse into the stable, let him produce another one for us to sell. I'll keep this one for myself." So he saddled and bridled the horse, but he found that he could not control him. Because he was not taking him to sell, and having forgotten to avoid the magician's house, he soon found that the animal had borne him away and was standing by the door of the house of the warlocks. The elder brother now decided that the best thing to do would be to sell the horse, and he offered it to the magicians at a high price. They realized that it was magical, and they said to one another, "We must prevent the spread of magical horses and things of that kind. Otherwise they will become too common, and people will not come to us to buy our wonders. Let us get this horse and kill it." The magicians paid the asking price, took the horse, which was really the enchanted younger brother, and shut it up in a dark stall. When they were ready to slaughter it, one of them held it by the tail, another by the head, and the others by its legs, so that it could not break away. When the young man who had become a horse realized what they were about to do, seeing the knife in the hand of the seventh magician, he thought, "I wish that any other living being could appear so that I might put myself into it." Hardly was this thought formed in his head than a little fish came swimming down a nearby stream, and the son of the Khan, in some strange way, went into it. He became the fish. But the 7 magician brothers knew what had happened, and they turned themselves into 7 large fish, which followed the small one. When they were very close to the little fish, with their mouths open wide to swallow him, the son of the Khan said within himself, "I wish that any other living being could appear, so that I might put myself into it." All at once there was a dove flying in the air, and the Khan's son became the dove. The 7 magicians, seeing what had happened, transformed themselves into 7 hawks, and pursued the dove over hills and dales, and nearly overtook him when it took refuge in Tibet. There is a shining mountain southwards in Tibet, and the dove managed to enter a cave there, called the Giver of Rest. There the dove went into the presence of the great teacher Nagarjuna. The 7 magicians at the entrance to the cave changed themselves into pious men dressed in cotton garments. They entered the presence of the master and humbly requested that he give them his rosary, because by then the dove had changed itself into a single bead on the string carried by the great teacher. But Nagarjuna understood inwardly what was happening. He handed them the chaplet, but not before he had taken off the single bead which was the dwelling of the son of the Khan. He dropped the bead out of his mouth, and it instantly became a man again, with a great and wonderful stick. Now the son of the Khan took the stick and slew the magicians who had been posing as pilgrims. False witnesses. This tale is thought to have been brought to the West by Jacques, Bishop of Acre, Palestine, who took part in the Crusades and died in Rome in 1240 AD. Its message, that people will often accept the assertions of the majority, however contrary to the evidence of their own senses, has been verified in the 20th century by psychologists. The earliest English version is that of 1518, and it is found in Hebrew, Persian, German, Spanish, Syriac, and Latin as well. The essential idea, however, has been traced back nearly 15 centuries, but it may have been first composed more than 2,000 years ago. This version is from the 15th century German adventures of the Saxon rogue Till Eulenspiegel, called in English Howlglass or Owlglass. The cunning Owlglass went to a fair where all kinds of things were being sold, to see what he could get for nothing. He laid his plans to see whether he could trap a peasant. After looking around for a time, he espied a countryman buying a nice piece of green cloth. This, he decided, will do for me. I shall get hold of the cloth. "Good morning," he said to the farmer. "And where did you buy that fine bolt of blue cloth?" "It isn't blue, it is green." "What nonsense," said Owlglass. "You must be blind. Anyone can see that it is the deepest and surest blue." The argument went on, with the peasant getting more and more annoyed, until they decided that the first person to come along should be asked to judge the colour. "What is more," said the peasant, "if this cloth is blue, then I'll forfeit it, and you can have it yourself for nothing." Now Owlglass had a friend, a rogue priest, with whom he had already arranged the trick. At a signal, the priest came out of where he was hiding, looking like the first passer-by. "Hey there," shouted the villain. "Sir priest, will you pronounce upon the colour of this cloth to settle an argument?" "Indeed I will, my son," said the priest. "It is undoubtedly blue, as anyone can see." "Now give me the cloth, you ignorant oaf!" cried Owlglass. "Not likely." The peasant was cunning. "For how do I know that you have not arranged all this with the priest to steal my cloth?" "Very well," said the crook. "Let us wait until the next man approaches." Sure enough, within a minute or two, another figure strode past and was called in to judge. He, too, was a confederate of the first two confidence men, and he insisted that the cloth was blue. So Owlglass won his wager, the cloth was handed over, and the three crooks divided the spoils. The Cobbler Who Became an Astrologer. The theme of surprise, things turning out well when the opposite is expected, and the other way about, is today well represented in detective and science fiction as it has been in world tales of the past. Whether it is the nagging wife or some other external cause, the principle in this kind of story is that someone is set on a course not of his or her own choosing. Beyond the exciting cause, however, there is the stream of destiny, which has its own plans, which themselves interlock with the fates of the other characters in the narrative. In this case, there is an interplay among the lives of the cobbler, the jeweller, the queen, the thieves, and so on, which seeks to indicate, so say traditional storytellers, that people and events do not exist in isolation. Furthermore, the results of actions cannot be predicted only from expectation, however well informed. It is believed by some Oriental thinkers that tales such as this illustrate the workings of the extra-dimensional world, which can sometimes be entered by those who have been prepared to handle its seeming confusion by means of a tale such as this. There was in the city of Isfahan a poor cobbler called Ahmed, who was possessed of a singularly greedy and envious wife. Every day the woman went to the public baths, the hammam, and each time saw someone there of whom she became jealous. One day she espied a lady dressed in a magnificent robe, jewels on every finger, pearls in her ears, and attended by many persons. Asking who this might be, she was told, "The wife of the king's chief astrologer." "Of course, that is what my wretched Ahmed must become, an astrologer," thought the cobbler's wife, and rushed home as fast as her feet would carry her. The cobbler, seeing her face, asked, "What in the world is the matter, my dear one?" "Don't speak to me or come near me until you become a court astrologer," she snapped. "Give up your vile trade of mending shoes. I shall never be happy until we are rich." "Astrologer! Astrologer!" cried Ahmed. "What qualifications have I to read the stars? You must be mad." "I neither know nor care how you do it. Just become an astrologer by tomorrow, or I will go back to my father's house and seek a divorce," she said. The cobbler was out of his mind with worry. How was he to become an astrologer? That was the question. He could not bear the thought of losing his wife, so he went out and bought a table of the zodiac signs, an astrolabe, and an astronomical almanac. To do this he had to sell his cobbler's tools, and so he felt he must succeed as an astrologer. He went out into the marketplace, crying, "O people, come to me for all answers to everything. I can read the stars, I know the sun, the moon, and the 12 signs of the zodiac. I can foretell that which is to happen." Now it so happened that the king's jeweller was passing by, in great distress at losing one of the crown jewels which had been entrusted to him for polishing. This was a great ruby, and he had searched for it high and low without success. The court jeweller knew that if he did not find it, his head would be forfeit. He came up to the crowd surrounding Ahmed and asked what was happening. "Oh, the very latest astrologer, Ahmed the cobbler, now promises to tell everything there is to know," laughed one of the bystanders. The court jeweller pressed forward and whispered into Ahmed's ear, "If you understand your art, discover for me the king's ruby, and I will give you 200 pieces of gold. If you do not succeed, I will be instrumental in bringing about your death." Ahmed was thunderstruck. He put a hand to his brow and, shaking his head, thinking of his wife, said, "O woman, woman, you are more baneful to the happiness of man than the vilest serpent." Now the jewel had been secreted by the jeweller's wife, who, guilty about the theft, had sent a female slave to follow her husband everywhere. This slave, on hearing the new astrologer cry out about a woman who was as poisonous as a serpent, thought that all must be discovered, and ran back to the house to tell her mistress. "You are found out, dear mistress," she panted. "You are discovered by a hateful astrologer. Go to him, lady, and plead with the wretch to be merciful, for if he tells your husband, you are lost." The woman then threw on her veil, and went to Ahmed and flung herself at his feet, crying, "Spare my honour and my life, and I will tell all." "Tell what?" enquired Ahmed. "Oh, nothing that you do not know already," she wept. "You know well I stole the ruby. I did so to punish my husband. He uses me so cruelly. But you, O most wonderful man from whom nothing is hidden, command me, and I will do whatever you ask that this secret never sees the light." Ahmed thought quickly, then said, "I know all you have done, and to save you I ask you to do this. Place the ruby at once under your husband's pillow, and forget all about it." The jeweller's wife returned home, and did as she was bidden. In an hour Ahmed followed her, and told the jeweller that he had made his calculations, and by the sun, moon, and stars the ruby was at that moment lying under his pillow. The jeweller ran from the room like a hunted stag, and returned a few moments later the happiest of men. He embraced Ahmed like a brother, and placed a bag containing 200 pieces of gold at his feet. The praises of the jeweller ringing in his ears, Ahmed returned home grateful that he could now satisfy his wife's lust for money. He thought he would have to work no more, but he was disenchanted to hear her say, "This is only your first adventure in this new way of life. Once your name gets known, you will soon be summoned to court." Unhappily, Ahmed remonstrated with her. He had no wish to go further in this career of fortune-telling. It simply was not safe. How could he expect to have further strokes of luck like the last, he asked. But his wife burst into tears, and again threatened him with divorce. Ahmed agreed to sally forth next day to the marketplace to advertise himself once more. He exclaimed loudly as before, "I am an astrologer. I can see everything which will happen by the power given to me by the sun, the moon, and the stars." The crowd gathered again, and a veiled lady was passing, while Ahmed was holding forth. She paused with her maid, and heard of the success he had had the day before with the finding of the king's ruby, together with a dozen other stories which had never happened. The lady, very tall and dressed in fine silks, pushed her way forward and said, "I ask you this conundrum. Where are my necklace and earrings which I mislaid yesterday? I dare not tell my husband about the loss, as he is a very jealous man and may think I have given them to a lover. Do you, astrologer, tell me at once where they are, or I am dishonoured. If you give me the right answer, which should not be difficult for you, I will at once give you 50 pieces of gold." The unfortunate cobbler was speechless for a moment on seeing such an important-looking lady before him, plucking at his arm, and he put a hand over his eyes. He looked at her again, wondering what he should say. Then he noticed that part of her face was showing, which was quite unsuitable for one of her social level, and the veil was torn, apparently in her pressing through the crowd. He leaned down and said in a quiet voice, "Madam, look to the rent, look to the rent." He meant the rent in her veil, but it immediately touched off a recollection in her mind. "Stay here, O greatest of astrologers," she said, and returned home to her house, which was not far away. There, in the rent in her bathroom wall, she discovered her necklace and earrings, where she herself had hidden them from prying eyes. Soon she was back, wearing another veil and carrying a bag containing 50 pieces of gold for Ahmed. The crowd pressed around him in wonder at this new example of the brilliance of the cobbler astrologer. Ahmed's wife, however, could not yet rival the wife of the chief court astrologer, so she still urged her husband to continue seeking fame and fortune. Now at this time the king's treasury was robbed of 40 chests of gold and jewels. Officers of state and the chief of police all tried to find the thieves, but to no avail. At last 2 servants were dispatched to Ahmed to ask if he would solve the case of the missing chests. The king's astrologer, however, was spreading lies about Ahmed behind his back, and was heard to say that he gave Ahmed 40 days to find the thieves. Then, he prophesied, Ahmed would be hanged for not being able to do so. Ahmed was summoned to the presence of the king, and bowed low before the sovereign. "Who is the thief, then, according to the stars?" asked the king. It's very difficult yet to say. My calculations they'll take some time," stammered Ahmed. But I will say this so far, Your Majesty. There was not 1 thief, but 40 who did this dreadful robbery of Your Majesty's treasure." "Very well," said the king. "Where are they, and what have they done with my gold and jewels?" I cannot say before 40 days, answered Ahmed, "if Your Majesty will grant me that time to consult the stars. Each night, you see, there are different conjunctions to study." "I grant you 40 days, then," said the king. "But when they are past, if you do not have the answer, your life will be forfeit." The court astrologer looked very pleased, and smirked behind his beard, and that look made poor Ahmed very uncomfortable. Suppose the court astrologer was right after all? He returned to his home and told his wife, "My dear, I fear that your great greed has meant that I have now only 40 more days to live. Let us cheerfully spend all we have made, for in that time I shall have to be executed." "But husband," said she, "you must find out the thieves in that time by the same method you found the king's ruby and the woman's necklace and earrings." "Foolish creature," said he, "do you not recall that I found the answers to those 2 cases simply by the will of Allah? I can never pull off such a trick again, not if I live to 100. No, I think the best thing will be for me each night to put a date in a bowl, and by the time there are 40 in it, I shall know that is the night of the 40th day and the end of my life. You know I have no skill in reckoning, and shall never know if I do not do it this way." "Take courage," said she, "mean, spiritless wretch that you are, and think of something, even while we are putting the dates in the bowl. so that I may ever yet be attired like the wife of the court astrologer's wife, and placed in that rank of life to which my beauty has entitled me." Not a word of kindness did she give him, not a thought for the turmoil that was in his heart. She only thought of herself and her personal victory over the wife of the court astrologer. Meanwhile, the 40 thieves, a few miles away from the city, had received accurate information regarding the measures taken to detect them. They were told by spies that the king had sent for Ahmed, and hearing that the cobbler had told of their exact number, feared for their lives. But the captain of the gang said, "Let us go tonight after dark and listen outside his house, for in fact he might have made an inspired guess, and we might be worrying over nothing." Everybody approved of this scheme, so after nightfall one of the thieves listening on the terrace just after the cobbler had offered his evening prayer heard Ahmed say, "Ah, there is the first of the 40. He had just been handed the first date by his wife. The thief, hearing these words, hurried back in consternation to the gang and told them that somehow, through wall and window, Ahmed had sensed his unseen presence and said, "Ah, there is the first of the 40. The tale of the spy was not believed, and the next night 2 members of the band were sent to listen, completely hidden by darkness, outside the house. To their dismay, they both heard Ahmed say quite distinctly, "My dear wife, tonight there are 2 of them." Ahmed, of course, having finished his evening prayer, had been given the second date by his wife. The astonished thieves fled into the night and told their companions what they had heard. The next night 3 men were sent, and the 4th night 4, and so for many nights they came just as Ahmed was putting the date into the bowl. On the last night they all went, and Ahmed cried loudly, "Ah, the number is complete. Tonight the whole 40 are here." All doubts were now removed. It was impossible that they could have been seen. Under cover of darkness they had come, mingling with passers-by and people of the town. Ahmed had never looked out of the window. Had he done so, he would not even have been able to see them, so deeply were they hidden in the shadows. "Let us bribe the cobbler astrologer," said the chief of the thieves. "We will offer him as much of the booty as he wants, and then we will prevent him telling the chief of police about us tomorrow," he whispered to the others. They knocked at Ahmed's door. It was almost dawn. Supposing it to be the soldiers coming to take him away to be executed, Ahmed came to the door in good spirits. He and his wife had spent half of the money on good living, and he was feeling quite ready to go. He did not even feel sorry that he was to leave his wife behind. She, in fact, was secretly pleased at having quite a lot of the money left over to spend solely on herself. "I know what you have come for," he shouted out as the cock crowed and the sun began to rise. "Have patience, I am coming out to you now, but what a wicked deed you are about to do." And he stepped forward bravely. "Most wonderful man," cried the head of the thieves, "we are fully convinced that you know why we have come, but can we not tempt you with 2,000 pieces of gold and beg you to say nothing about the matter?" "Say nothing about it," said Ahmed. "Do you honestly think it is possible that I should suffer such gross wrong and injustice without making it known to all the world?" "Have mercy upon us," exclaimed the thieves, and most of them threw themselves at his feet. "Only spare our lives and we shall return the treasure we stole." The cobbler was not sure if he were indeed awake or perhaps still sleeping, but realizing that these were the 40 thieves, he assumed a solemn tone and said, "Wretched men, you cannot escape from my penetration, which reaches to the sun and the moon and knows every star in the sky. Your repentance has saved you. If you will restore every chest of the 40, I will do my very best to intercede with the king on your behalf. But go now. Get the treasure and place it in a ditch a foot deep, which you must dig under the wall of the old hammam, the public baths. If you do this before the people of the city of Isfahan are up and about, your lives will be spared. If not, you shall all hang. Go, or destruction will fall upon you and your families." Stumbling and falling and picking themselves up, the band of thieves rushed away. Would it work? Ahmed knew he only had a short time to wait and find out. It was a very long shot, but he knew that he had only one life to lose, and that he was in great danger anyway. But Allah is just. Rewards suitable to their merits awaited Ahmed and his wife. At midday, Ahmed stood cheerfully before the king, who said, "Your looks are promising. Have you good news?" "Your Majesty," said Ahmed, "the stars will only grant one or the other, the 40 thieves or the 40 chests of treasure. Will your Majesty choose?" "I should be sorry not to punish the thieves," said the king, "but if it must be so, I choose the treasure." "And you give the thieves a full and free pardon, O king?" "I do," said the monarch, "provided I find my treasure untouched." "Then follow me," said Ahmed, and set off to the old hammam. The king and all his courtiers followed Ahmed, who most of the time was casting his eyes to heaven and murmuring things under his breath, describing circles in the air the while. When his prayer was finished, he pointed to the southern wall and requested that His Majesty ask the slaves to dig, saying that the treasure would be found intact. In his heart of hearts he hoped it were true. Within a short while all the 40 chests were discovered, with all the royal seals intact. The king's joy knew no bounds. He embraced Ahmed like a father and immediately appointed him chief court astrologer. "I declare that you shall marry my only daughter," he cried delightedly, "as you have restored the fortunes of my kingdom, and to thus promote you is nothing less than my duty." The beautiful princess, who was as lovely as the moon on her 14th night, was not dissatisfied with her father's choice, for she had seen Ahmed from afar and secretly loved him from the first glance. The wheel of fortune had taken a complete turn. At dawn, Ahmed was conversing with the band of thieves, bargaining with them. At dusk, he was lord of a rich palace and the possessor of a fair, young, high-born wife who adored him. But this did not change his character, and he was as contented as a prince as he had been as a poor cobbler. His former wife, for whom he had now ceased to care, moved out of his life and got the punishment to which her unreasonableness and unfeeling vanity had condemned her. Thus is the tapestry which is our life completed by the great designer.